In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this classic meatloaf, a dish that's been a staple in American cuisine for nearly a century. But I'm adding a special twist today. I'm baking it in a heart-shaped pan for a fun and festive touch. And to make things even easier, I'm using Idahoan classic mashed potatoes, so let's get started. To make this meatloaf, you're going to need 1 to 1.5 pounds of ground beef. I'm using ground sirloin because that's my preferred beef. It doesn't produce as much grease as ground round or ground chuck, but of course you can use whatever you prefer. I'm also using 1 small chopped onion, and you're going to use 1/2 cup of plain breadcrumbs, 1 egg. Of course, there are some other ingredients that I need to add, but I'm going to start to mix the meatloaf just a little bit before I add those other things. Now I'm going to add my spices. This is a very simple recipe, so I'm adding 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Here I'm adding 1/3 cup milk. And now it's time to thoroughly combine all of your ingredients, and you will probably have to use your hands a little bit to mix this together. And that's what I'm doing here. Don't be afraid to get your hands a little dirty. This is the pan that I'm going to use. This is a heart-shaped cake pan that I found in Target, and I'm going to line it with parchment paper so that way it will be easy for me to remove the meatloaf once it's finished baking, and I can transfer it to a baking sheet or cookie sheet so that I can broil it quickly and after I've added the mashed potatoes and the ketchup to the top. So what I'm doing here is I am pressing the meat mixture into the pan. It is a little bit tricky when you're using the parchment paper, but it's certainly doable. Now it's time to bake. I'm going to bake this in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 45 minutes, give or take. Please keep in mind that you may need to adjust either your baking time or oven temperature depending on your oven. Just don't let it burn. Keep your eye on it. While your meatloaf is cooking, I suggest going ahead and making your mashed potatoes. Of course, if you want to make mashed potatoes from scratch, you can do that. But I'm just using instant potatoes because it's easier. I'm using the Idahoan classic mashed potatoes, as I've already mentioned. It comes in a packet, so it makes a small quantity and it's very easy. I'm just adding 2 cups of boiling water to a bowl. And now I'm going to stir in the packet of mashed potatoes, as you can see here. And voila, there you go, instant mashed potatoes. And here's the meatloaf. Once I've pulled it out of the oven, it is fully cooked, but you don't want to overcook it because you don't want it to dry out. I'm wiping off the excess grease, and I'm going to let this cool down a few minutes before I remove it from the pan. Using the parchment paper makes it easier to do that. So now I've transferred the meatloaf to a cookie sheet that's been lined with aluminum foil because I'm using the broiler feature in my oven. You can't use parchment paper using that feature, the broiler feature, because it can burn. So aluminum foil is best. And now I'm putting the mashed potatoes on top of the meatloaf, as you can see. Once I've added all the mashed potatoes, it's time to add ketchup to the top. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just pouring on a lot. And then I'm going to smooth all of this out. I did consider doing stripes, but I didn't think I could do a good job doing that. So I just decided to cover the entire area. So I'm adding a lot of ketchup, and I'm going to take a spoon and I'm going to smooth it out as best I can and try to make it look as neat and pretty as I can. Once I'm satisfied with my work, I'm going to stick this back in the oven. I am using the broiler feature, as I've already mentioned. I'm going to broil this on low for about 3 to 5 minutes. Keep an eye on it because you don't want it to burn or dry out. And now the meatloaf is ready after boiling it for 5 minutes on low on the middle rack. And there you have it, heart-shaped meatloaf. Wasn't that easy? This is so simple to make. I think it's worth the effort. It's a fun and festive way to celebrate Valentine's Day and a way to impress your loved ones. And not only that, it's absolutely delicious. Okay, let me know what you think down in the comments section. I would love to hear from you. And please let me know if you try out any of my recipes. If you've made it through the entire video, I do appreciate you sticking around to the end. And while you're here, please do consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already done so, because I do plan to upload similar content in the future. And please check out my link in the bio, where I make a lot of great recommendations about everything from beauty products, fashion, fragrances, things for the home, things for the kitchen, you name it. Oh, and before I forget, this red velvet cupcake with chocolate frosting is the perfect dessert for Valentine's Day. So if you want to learn how to make this, please subscribe to my channel because I'll be uploading the video in the next day or two.